Welcome to the Clarity Advisor Show, where you'll learn how to grow your team today. Join Ken Trupke and his guests as they discuss what works and doesn't work to grow your team in today's world. And now, your host, Ken Trupke.
Hello, and welcome to the Clarity Advisor Show. One aspect of starting and running a small business that's often overlooked is the importance of good legal advice. Having an attorney on your team to help you from the beginning when you're even determining what kind of entity you want to set up legally, all the way through negotiating contracts with your customers and suppliers and mitigating the risks of all the things that happen in your business can all benefit from having a good attorney. My guest today, Jim Shafer of Shafer Legal, has been advising small businesses for decades. Jim also has an extensive background in real estate. So if you're considering doing some kind of rental businesses, he's got thoughts on that as well. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Jim Shafer. Jim, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So Shafer Legal, what problems do you solve and who are your main clients?
Primarily problems that small businesses as small business owners have. So it could be just about anything. A lot of what I've been doing lately has been real estate. So a lot of leases, and then also, kind of the front end of it. The back end of it, of course, is landlord-tenant eviction litigation. Do a fair amount of that at this point in time. So for about 10 years, I'd been selling some real estate in addition to practicing law, and wound up with a pretty varied book of business from the other realtors that I used to work with. And so that just kind of naturally led to more of the landlord-tenant work.
Yeah, well, I was going to definitely ask, bring us up to speed on your career, going as far back as you choose, but how did you get to the place that you're doing business law?
Sure. Well, on the day I was born, but realistically, it did start very young. My dad owned his own business, several of them. And from a very young age, I was working with him, selling photography, helping fix and sell computers. And that kind of led to an interest in business work. So when I ultimately wound up going to law school, I wanted to be a business attorney, business and estate planning, because I kind of really mostly just want to help people. And those are areas that there's a lot of people doing their own businesses. There's a lot of people that need help with all of the things to help start, run, and grow their businesses. But then also, what do you do on how you try to get that business from one person to the next, from one generation to the next? And then, along with that would be, estate planning and probate. And most recently, really taking a look at that elder law side of things, where as we have the aging of America, more and more people are needing their various, legal and care services around not just their assets or their businesses, but also their own personal selves and their lives.
Okay. So going back to the small business owner, small business leader that you're helping, why is it important for them to have an attorney on their team?
There are so many things that could go wrong. And the idea of having an attorney on the team is not for when things go wrong, but to help them keep from going wrong in the first place. So identifying issues and hotspots early, even as simple as how you set your business up, can really smooth that path to success. Because, anytime you start a new business, it takes a good 2 to 5 years to even out those highs and lows of getting things going. And every step of the way can involve pitfalls. And to help avoid those pitfalls, one member of that team absolutely should be the attorney.
Okay. And what are some things that you've seen people miss? Like, when are those, good thing you had a lawyer because this and this happened?
Sure. Well, if you decide to start your business, so-and-so wants to start renting out a house, right? So I kind of run into this a lot, where someone says, hey, I'm going to buy an investment property. I'm going to rent it out to, people that want to come into town to stay short stay or even long stay, right? We really want to make money as a landlord. And so they buy the property, and then they start running it, and they grab a lease form online. And then by the time I get to it, where they've managed to land their first client from hell, where that person, they come in and they say everything's wrong with the property, so the landlord tries to fix it, but there's really nothing wrong. And they say, well, because you are making the property unsafe, we are going to not pay you. And then the landlord is like, well, what do I do now? And my first question is always, well, what does your lease say? Send me your lease. I'll take a look at it. Sometimes, it writes in the lease that the landlord takes care of everything, and so I have to tell them, hey, sorry, yeah, even though when you bought your house, you have to take care of like the yard, you have to take care of fixing things. But if you accidentally wrote down in your lease that you, the landlord, take care of it, then the tenant's right. Or better yet, the landlord says, look, they've not been paying me. I'm just going to turn their lights off. I'm just going to shut their water off. In fact, I already did that. And my prompt response is immediately turn everything back on, because that's a bad idea. And it's also very illegal. I have a tendency to run across people that have done that. Others have given me, leases that are 20 pages long and, cover every possible aspect of life and might be a little bit overbearing. So there's a balance between, what your legal rights and obligations are, and then what's common sense. And so sometimes I try to help kind of thread that needle too.
Okay. So for a person starting a business, we talk about getting an LLC as a common question. Do I need an LLC? Do I need to file with the state, whatever state I'm in? What is the actual process to actually get a business up and running? And what do you advise your clients to do kind of first, second, and third to get their business off the ground?
Sure. Well, the first thing I ask the client is, what do they want to do, right? What is it they are trying to do? What problem are they solving? Where are they going from? Are they a paint store? Are they are they someone who wants to be a property management company? Do they want to become a real estate brokerage? Are they just a regular old, hey, I've got something really cool that I want to sell to people and start selling it? Or are there, are they in a business that's regulated? Like, you come across, I used to help physicians start their businesses, and, they've got all of this regulation that they have to follow. So the first question is, what do you want to do? What do you want to do with your life? How do you want to manage it? And what is it that wants to be done? And then you start then working through, well, what are the assets that you need to protect? How do you want to separate? And I call it like creating your own little box, right? It's like a box to put things in. So when you create your company, it's just this empty box. And so what is that box? Is it an LLC? Is it a corporation? Is it an S corporation? Is it, is it a real estate investment trust? I mean, there are many, many different ways that you can create your box and then decorate it. And what does it look like? And how does it work? And so really finding out what that small business owner's goals are and what the various laws and regulations that they have to follow many times will dictate kind of the form of their business. LLCs, and you use the letters all the time, they're called limited liability companies. They're pretty wild hybrid creation that started in the 80s because business owners were stuck with this double taxation in a C corporation where the business itself gets taxed and then the business owner gets taxed when they take their distributions on their income. And then there's the kind of the variation on that with the S corporation, where it's what they call a single layer of tax. But with an S corporation, everybody has to have the same character and quality of ownership interest, right? So everybody's got their own same basic shares. In a limited liability company, you can really play around with the rights and liabilities and obligations inside the company to be able to get the broadest base of investment in that. So it's what they call a flexible entity. And so I do recommend, forming a limited liability company most of the time. Every once in a while, you have situations where perhaps you've got someone who's buying into a franchise, and that franchise agreement requires them to be a certain type of corporation or entity. And so we just do it that way too.
Okay, so a couple questions off of that. One, do I need to start with an LLC? If I've got an idea for a business, I want to start painting houses. And so can I just go painting houses and get money from people for doing that? Or does step one really need to be create that LLC or whatever entity type makes sense?
Well, my recommendation for kind of like risk mitigation, liability mitigation would be to create some kind of a separate entity from you. Because if you just go out and start doing things and getting money for it, if things go wrong, whatever is not covered by your insurance, and I'm already assuming you've got business insurance. If you don't, then that's the first step, clearly. Anything above that business insurance would go back against you and all of your assets as a single pool. So absolutely, I've recommended every single time to get your business into some kind of a box so it protects the bigger pool of the rest of your assets.
Okay. And then following up on that with more of a real estate-based question, for people that want to buy investment properties, they're going to get a house and rent it, or going to do short-term rentals, weekend rentals, whatever. Do you recommend that people create an entity for that business as well? And then even beyond that, for each property, do I need a different LLC for every property, or do I just need one for the whole thing, or do I not need anything?
Right. You need something. You definitely need to, when you're buying and wanting to do investment properties, and my absolute recommendation is definitely get at least one LLC or some type, corporation, S corporation, to purchase that property. Banks are really pretty comfortable now with you buying an investment property and using an LLC, especially an LLC, because that's what they call a disregarded entity for tax purposes, if it's just you. Now, if it's you and your wife, you can kind of get to that single member LLC too. If it's you and other investors, no, of course not. It'd be treated as a partnership for tax purposes. But even then, I've had several transactions where businesses are being bought and houses and other pieces of property being bought and sold, and they're creating these what we call special purpose entities, which is a company just to hold that piece of property. And depending on how complex or how simple you want your operations to be, how big a pot of money you want each piece of property to inhabit in that box, if you will. I'm still using the box theme. Do you want to make one box with like several little bits and pieces in it with, multiple pieces of property? That's fine. Just know that if you've got 10 pieces of property in a single LLC, one of them goes bad, all of the assets of the other 9, whatever that money is throwing off, will be available if things go bad. If, on the other hand, you have 10 pieces of property, you keep them in 10 separate boxes. If something goes bad with one, you've isolated it down to that one piece of property.
Okay, and that makes sense. Wow, there's so much here. I think my recommendation would be talk to a lawyer before you start doing any of this, because it just sounds like there's a lot of it depends and a lot of variation and a lot of decisions. Just how complicated or simple do I want to even make it? And there's trade-offs here. So it feels like it all leads to have a conversation with an attorney before you get started on these things.
Well, and really the attorney is, as much as I would love to say, yes, only talk to the attorney. The attorney is really only one member of the team, because remember, the attorney will be able to advise best and most and really legally on those legal and regulatory issues. Going along with that, having a financial advisor, having an insurance advisor, and then really insurance, finance, and attorneys. That's pretty much how I would cover that. When you're wanting to start something, those are the three people that I would start talking to. Also, maybe a fourth would be someone who's gone down that road before. If you can find somebody that's doing what you are doing, a competitor, or somebody who does something similar, talk to them. See where they have fallen flat on their face and what's worked for them.
Yeah, and my experience is surprisingly that people are willing to share. People are, as much as you would think, oh, no one's going to tell me things, and certainly not share their mistakes, and we're competitors, why would they tell me? People love to share their story and help and just be helpful to each other. And so, yeah, I think that's great advice. Reach out to some people that are either doing what you want to do, or ahead of you in the game, or direct competitors, whatever. But I think people will be surprised how much help other people will provide, because we do in the end want to help each other, and we want to see people succeed. And in the end, there's so much business out there if you've got the abundance mindset, that we don't need to feel like, oh, if I tell them something, then they might do something and that would keep me from getting something. Like, there's plenty for everybody. Why not just make it better for everybody? So I think that's right too. As far as the team, I think if you mean by the finance person that they also know tax, that also feels like a piece of the puzzle, because you mentioned taxes a couple times in there. And so that seems like something I would want to get advice on as well.
Yeah, sometimes you will do a form or a structure really based on how you want to manage the taxation of what you're doing. Doesn't mean that what they said in law school, don't let the tax tail wag the transaction dog, because sometimes the tax savings that you're trying to achieve may cost you more in the long run. So you just have to take a look at the overall approach on what you're trying to do, both transaction and then also if you're starting, running, growing a business, how you want to manage that.
Yeah, and the tax laws, as we all know, can change over time. And so if you go too heavy on structuring something based on taxes, well, now when that tax law changes, you might wish you didn't. So I want to get back to some more real estate questions and your experience in specifically doing real estate. And we'll do that on the other side of the break. So stay with us. We're talking with Jim Shafer of Shafer Legal on the Clarity Advisor Show.
Is your business where you want it to be, or on track to get there? Clarity Advisors helps business leaders improve communication and get your team aligned and engaged for greater success. We specialize in helping you streamline your sales and operating systems to improve efficiency and grow your profits. Call or text Ken at 616-822-2998 to have a complimentary 12-minute call to see what some clarity could do for you.
Okay, welcome back to the Clarity Advisor Show. Today we're talking with Jim Shafer of Shafer Legal. And Jim, you've talked a lot about real estate and law. You've done both. So coming out into your professional career, wanting to be a lawyer and going to law school, then you had a stretch where you were actually in real estate doing transactions. What led you to that, and how did you get back to law?
Sure. Well, pretty simply, I was in a couple of different law firms before I decided to take a break from the practice of law. I was a little frustrated with law firm life, honestly. So I started out in a very small firm. It was a mom and pop shop, if you will, as an attorney. And, we did just general business, estate planning. And really at the time coming out of school, I was there for a few years, and I felt like I had this need for a bigger firm experience. And so I got the opportunity to literally just go up the stairs, about 5 floors in the building I was in, to a different firm. Again, doing business, doing real estate, doing estate planning and probate, more business focused at that point in time. And I thought it was good. I thought it was fine. It was still, again, as a young associate in a law firm, it's no joke. There's a lot of work to be done, and not always as many people to do it as you think. The hours are long. The pay is not what I thought it would be coming out of law school. It was not like the firm where they hand you six figures coming out of school, at least when I was in school, for the average attorney coming out of school at the time. And so I was working hard, frustrated with that, but then again, got an opportunity to go to a slightly larger firm, right, instead of smaller. And then I was doing the business side of healthcare, and that was pretty cool. I mean, buying and selling hospitals is definitely something that, is just, it's all encompassing. There's a lot of large pieces moving, and you engage lots of different advisors in the process. So that was fun. But then, again, even as a senior associate, it can be very draining. It can also be one of those things where you sometimes feel like you are working really hard, but you don't know what the intentionality or the goals are. And I came out of law school wanting to help people. And I know fundamentally I was helping people on a broad scale, but I didn't feel it at the time. And I was very frustrated with that. Through a couple of moves between Indianapolis, where I started, where I grew up and started my practice, practicing law. And then so I moved to DC for a year and then moved to Grand Rapids. And here in Grand Rapids, I had an opportunity to really take stock. I was 14 years in my practice and still was not partner. I was of counsel. I was frustrated. And then I threw my hands up and I said, I don't want to practice law anymore. And our realtor, very good friend, said, well, come sell real estate with me. So I did. So for 9.5 years, I sold real estate as both residential and some commercial with Coldwell Banker. For a period of time, I was the manager of the Rockford office, the Coldwell Banker office there. Unfortunately, it was like right at the beginning of the pandemic. So I was mostly herding a team of very frustrated cats. Realtors are small business people, entrepreneurs at the heart, and salespeople. And they want to do their own thing. And when everyone is telling you have to do something, one thing, not go into the office, wear masks, do all of these kinds of things, there was a lot of pushback against that. Sometimes it was pushback against me. It's fine as the manager, but I was realizing that, maybe my frustration wasn't necessarily the pandemic. I was continuing to practice law. I kept my license up and I was continuing to take in projects while I was selling real estate, and that side of my business was growing. So I thought, well, maybe I needed a change of location. So I changed from Coldwell Banker to Jake Haglin's group, JH Realty, over in Ada. And about 6 months into that gig, I realized, oh no, it's really not location. It's really, I rediscovered my passion for practicing law and helping helping small business owners, because those were who I was helping already, both with eviction work, on landlord-tenant, structuring small deals, helping small businesses run and grow. I mean, from bridal shops to dentists' offices, I realized that's really where my sweet spot is. It always has been. I should have remembered that. But what I found in selling real estate, I got such an in-depth feel for that industry that I can help people as an attorney, but also as an advisor when things may or may not be getting ready to go awry, and help stop that transaction from going off the rails. Just had a recent one that could have gone sideways, but because I knew the structure of the deal, and when you've got a first-time home buyer, they're always highly tense and stressed. And same with young realtors. There was a young realtor on one side. There was a first-time home buyer on the other side. The deal was going sideways, and it was just a matter of being able to get everybody to calm back down and realize that this is the process. It takes a certain amount of time. And again, as an attorney, if I didn't know the real estate side of it, I would have said, well, here are all of the rights and laws that you have, and we need to sue right away and do this, that, and the other, and force people's hands. And the truth of the matter is that's not always the case. In fact, it rarely is the case that it's the wisest decision to go run to court.
Yeah, well, that makes fun. Yeah, that's such a good story. I love hearing how you kind of got tired of what you were doing but still had the passion to help people. That's really the thread through all that, and jumped over and went to real estate and then came back because you were helping people all along, just in different ways. And now it's really come together where you've got that deep knowledge of real estate as well as all your experience in law, and it's a great combination. So yeah, that's really cool. Okay. I did have a listener that I mentioned that I was going to have an attorney on the show, small business owner, with a question that I think is pretty common. And I know I've experienced this in small business as well, where typically as the small business, you've got one or both of these situations. Either your customers are way bigger than you. Maybe you're a small supplier to really big name customers, or maybe you're the customer of really, really big suppliers. Yes. And so the question is, from a legal standpoint, when you've got these supplier agreements or you've got contracts, purchase agreements with big customers, what do you do as the small business person? You get these 9-page small fine print documents. I'm supposed to go through those and redline those. Does it matter? Are they going to really budge on? Can you just go, this little section here I'm not really good with? Or do you just have to take it as it is? Does it make sense to run that stuff by an attorney? Where do you land, and how do you advise small business on those things?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, my recommendation is always have your attorney or an attorney take a look at a contract like that. There could be mistakes in it, for one thing, right? These are, if it's a large company, it's not always the person at the top of the chain that is actually creating that contract. They've got a form they've been using, and they've just got whoever their salesperson is at the time is putting them together, and they may not even know what they're doing. That's first and foremost. So, and then the second thing is, when you're looking at it, you want to know where the pinch points are. Where are the things, what do you need to do? And what could go wrong, right? And what are you allowed to do if things go wrong? Well, what happens if you're not paid? How do you manage that? So just understanding not only kind of the basics of the terms of your deal, because I'm going to tell you right now that what they told you on the phone or in an email is not what you will see in the actual contract, right? So just understanding the actual terms of the deal that you're about to sign. The third thing is that you absolutely still have an opportunity, always have an opportunity, to ask for changes or clarifications. Now, as you mentioned, you're talking about that power disparity, right? You could be in a situation where you're dealing with, 3M, and you are a small glue supplier to 3M, and they say, well, this is what we want, this is what we're going to pay for it, here's how we're going to manage it. And you know what? They're probably going to get just about every single bit of that, right? The power disparity, you don't have much wiggle room, right? They're like, look, if you want the contract, you get the contract, or as is. But there's still times when you can ask. It depends on what you're providing. If you have a very unique service, if you have a very unique product, you have more, even though you're tiny, you have more negotiating room. So, an axiom that I actually learned in real estate was, you can't get anything if you don't ask for it, right? So it's okay to ask. Now, tiny little detail red line things, probably not. You're probably asking big picture stuff like, how am I going to get paid? How much am I going to get paid? What does it look like if things go wrong? What if there's a dispute between when I've tried to do something and you say, well, I'm not going to pay you? How do we reconcile those disputes? Those are the areas I'm looking at. Those are what are the insurance requirements? I've seen a lot of times where a very large corporation will think that having $10 million of occurrence insurance is nothing, because it is nothing to them. But I will tell you now that to someone who has, 2 people on staff and is basically doing $100,000 per occurrence insurance, they can't afford to get the insurance product to be able to provide what they're doing to the really large supplier. So then that's where I push for variation. I'm like, if you want this big company, you need to be able to work with the really small person that I'm representing.
Oh, that's super helpful because it comes up often and you get these really long contracts. Yeah. And it's just, does it even make sense to try to ask? But I love the idea of let's stay with the key things, the big picture things. What could go wrong? What if I don't get paid? Yeah. You're not going to nitpick the line items, but trying to get some negotiation on those bigger things. And of course, as you said, the more niche and unique you are, the more leverage you do have. And I think sometimes as small business people, we forget that. Hey, there's people on the other side of this table as well. And they're just people just like us, even though they represent, in your example, 3M. Well, you're talking to somebody, hopefully, not just, paper emails back and forth from purchasing, but you actually have a name and you can say, hey, listen, here's what I'm trying to do. Here's my issue. Can we talk about this? And you might be in a position to get some things. And you're right. You don't get what you don't ask for sure. So I appreciate that. That's really helpful. I know the audience will appreciate that as well. So Jim, as we wrap up, this has been great. I really appreciate your time. I know you're always learning and growing yourself. What are some things that you've been listening to, reading, working on?
Sure. Lately, really because of a very specific personal family situation with my mom, my dad, and a brother who has special needs, I am actually getting my elder law certificate to be able to help other people who've gone through the same journey that I have. It was amazing to me that as an estate planning attorney, and probate attorney, and business attorney for the last 25 years, there were times and places where I was absolutely confused about what was going on with Michigan's Department of Health and Human Services, with the various care providers, trying to deal with hospice care. All of this made me realize there was a large gap, if you will, in my area of law that absolutely is needed now more than ever. So that's kind of what I've been doing, is really leaning into how do you deal with elder and elder law and disability law, big time.
Okay. Yeah. And before we started recording, you'd mentioned a couple of podcasts that you listen to.
Yeah.
Tell me about those.
Oh, gosh. Well, I do, I love Dungeons and Dragons for one thing. So I've been listening to the occasional live D&D role-playing things that are, one of them is called Not Another D&D Podcast. It's been around for like 3 or 4 years, and it's irreverent. It's like amazingly not safe for work. It is also hilarious, especially if, like me growing up in the 70s as a young kid, and D&D was paper and pencil and running around with capes and wooden swords in the backyard like kids. It's really just funny to watch people do what you and I are doing right now, but playing Dungeons and Dragons at the same time. So embarrassing but true. But then also to stay up on current events, I love listening to I think it's Up First from NPR. I do like listening to that because it's about 10-15 minute slice of kind of current events each day. And then I also like listening to Sisters-in-Law, which is a legal-based approach to current events by 4 women who are absolute masters at their craft, storytelling, but also they're attorneys and from around the country. And it's just it's a great way to laugh and to cry and to also stay up on the issues. So that's what I do.
All right, good stuff. I was not expecting the D&D thing, but that's an awesome share. So thanks for that. And we'll put a warning. We'll put a warning along with the note in the show notes. Not safe for work.
You for anything but NPR.
And the Sisters-in-Law is just, if nothing else, a hilarious title. I love that. That's very clever.
And they're very good at what they do.
So Jim, who should reach out to you, and what would be the best way for people to do that?
Yep. Small business owners, their managers. Easiest way to reach out to me is with my cell phone. It's the only number that I have. It's the only number that I've used for the last decade or so. And that's 616-558-1098. Or you can reach me. I do have a website, shaferlegal.com, SHAFER legal.com. And then, of course, my email address is Jim, no, big surprise, Jim@shaferlegal.com. That's how you can get a hold of me.
Excellent. Well, we will get all those in the show notes. I appreciate that. And again, thank you so much for your time. This has been really interesting and helpful. And I hope people take advantage of your willingness to have a conversation about all things real estate and law, and get the help that we need as small business people, trying to help people with our business by doing it the right way and the safe and legal way. So again, thanks for being here.
Sure thing. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. And that brings us to the end of another Clarity Advisor show. Thank you so much for joining us. If you could leave a review on the platform you are watching or listening right now, that would be amazing. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for being here. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Clarity Advisor Show. Clarity Advisors is a speaking, training, and consulting firm specializing in helping you simplify your sales and operating systems to improve efficiency and grow your profits. Connect with Clarity Advisors today to learn more about how they can help you improve communication and get your team aligned and engaged for greater success.